What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Synergy Team tier list. This is a massive infographic that features all the Synergy teams in the game, tons of data and tons of information. However, we're in a bit of a pickle. We want to make sure that we are including exactly the information that you guys want on there and ranking it the way that you guys feel is most appropriate. So I will, of course, explain what I mean. Let's get into it. All right, so as I mentioned, today we are talking about the Synergy Team tier list, and this graphic has proven to be a bit of a challenge in terms of how we want to present the data. It's very, very important to us that our tier lists and our rankings are as objective as possible and based on real data. The problem is, depending on which aspects of the data we choose to highlight for the ranking, sometimes it depicts a version of the meta that's not particularly accurate to what people are experiencing, just because it focuses on certain aspects and neglects others. And so we definitely want to take a second look at how we are organizing this. And we've kind of arrived at a bit of a standstill where we have a few different options and we want to leave it up to you guys. I'm going to put a poll in the video description and I want you guys to vote on which of the options you prefer. And I'm going to explain the pros and cons of each of them here because the Brain Trust spent almost an entire day yesterday debating the merits of which presentation of this would ultimately be best for you guys. But I want to start from the beginning. So this is the Synergy Team tier list, and I want to give a shout out to a content creator named MrHartgrave. You can go check him out. If it's okay with him, I'll put a link to his stuff in the video description. If he doesn't want it there, then you'll just have to seek him out. But he made a video that was heavily critical of this graphic, and that's not entirely unwarranted. There's a lot of things on this infographic that if you don't understand the formulas we use to make it, it seems kind of silly. And I don't necessarily blame anyone who looked at this and was like, you guys are dumb, your infographics are dumb, not listening to your advice. Now, the people who are here listening to exactly how we factored it in and how we evaluated it and the formulas that actually produce these results understand that by the metrics we used, it's verifiably accurate, but it definitely does not reflect the current meta for a few reasons. So I'll give you a few examples. And also, another reason we want to take a look at this is because it is very open to misinterpretation. So I only watched the first few minutes of the video that MrHartgrave put out, and he pointed out a few things that also made me realize some people are misinterpreting some aspects of it. So one of the things that he said, and again, this is not a bashing of him. I'm very thankful that he made that video so we understand that there's aspects of this that we really need to look at and make sure it's even easier to understand and more simplified, and that it's giving you guys the information that you want. He saw here that the Uncanny X-Men are listed as third for Campaign Raid and Dark Dimension, and he immediately went on to tear down how they're absolutely not the third best raid team, and we completely agree. The Uncanny X-Men are not the third best raid team. However, that column in particular is a combination of Campaign Raid and Dark Dimension, and so while the Uncanny X-Men are definitely a subpar raid team, as far as campaign goes, because you can summon Dark Phoenix and as long as you're running Beast, still not even lose a campaign medal, they are one of the best teams for campaign. And especially when it comes to Dark Dimension, even though no one uses full synergy teams for Dark Dimension, and we don't encourage you to, if you had to use full synergy teams for Dark Dimension, they would rank among the highest because they're the team with Phoenix. So they would do particularly well in Dark Dimension 3, but also Dark Dimensions 1 and 2. They'd only really get separated for Dark Dimension 4. Because they rank so highly for Campaign and Dark Dimension, they ended up with a very high ranking for Campaign Raid and Dark Dimension, but because we now understand, everyone's kind of looking at that column mostly to determine their raid viability. Obviously, we want to drop that a bit. So we are changing the weighting of various game modes. For example, for Arena Offense and Blitz, really only matters if they're dependable enough to put them on Sim. Very few people are using full synergy teams for Arena Offense and Arena Defense, so we're going to really shift the weight of how a lot of these categories impact it. But where we're really hitting an impasse is Alliance War. There's a lot of debate about how to present Alliance War, and we've come up with 4 options. So again, there's going to be a poll in the video description, and after I've explained the 4 options, I want you guys to go and vote on which one you think we should actually put on the graphic, because again, we want to be presenting the information in the way that you will find it the easiest to receive and the easiest to evaluate. All right, so option 1 would be keeping an Alliance War overall column. Now, we will be, again, refactoring what determines Alliance War overall. We've come up with a new way to rank the offenses, a new way to rank the defenses, but a single column is obviously the most simplistic, it's the most concise, and it just tells you where a team ranks. If they're, a top 5 war team, they're a high priority. And if they're, the number 20 war team, then they're obviously not as important as some of the top options. So what are the arguments against a single war column? Well, you end up using 8 defense teams and then somewhere between like 10 and 12 offense teams. So what you run into is there may be a team that is even like the 4th or 5th best defense team, but because so many of the flex teams above them can rank higher because they will have a really strong offense score, if we simply do war overall, you might run into an instance where, again, either like the 4th or 5th best defense team comes in showing it like rank 17. And again, that would be accurate because a lot of the other teams will be very, very strong offense teams that flex and make pretty good defense teams, or vice versa. But when you factor in that many teams, that means even the 20th best war team is still one that you'd be using very regularly. And so when people see a team ranked, say, 17th, it makes them think, I guess this team is really, really bad for war. When again, in reality, they might be one of the top defenses. So it can be very, very confusing in that regard. Option 2, a war offense column and a war defense column. Sounds pretty straightforward. People are mainly looking to improve either their offense or their defense at a particular time, and we can list which teams rank really highly for offense and which teams rank really highly for defense. However, while it sounds good on the surface, there are, again, a couple complications that make the presentation of that data a little weird. As you'll see here on this spreadsheet, we have the teams that have some kind of a defensive bonus specifically hard-coded for defense. Those are in green. Teams that are specifically hard-coded for offense, they have some perks that only activate on offense. Those are in red. And then you'll see here there are a ton of flex teams listed in blue. So what you run into when you do an offense column and a defense column is there are so many flex teams that, for example, there is no correct answer for should Black Order be offense or defense, should Astonishing X-Men be offense or defense, should Sinister Six be offense or defense. You can absolutely have preferences, and really you want to have them based on which deficiencies in your war roster they'll shore up, but they're perfectly viable on offense or defense, a lot of flex teams. So what you run into is that a team like the Marauders is currently ranked, what do we have here? This is rank 14, and that's with all the flex teams ahead of them. So we pretty much all agree the Marauders are currently a top 8 war defense team. That's not really much up for debate. However, if we're going to include all the flex teams, if you actually put all the flex teams that perform really well on defense, like your Skill Military is now on defense, your Black Order is now on defense, Astonishing X-Men's now on defense, Uncanny X-Men, Sinister Six, all these teams, suddenly you have the Marauders not ranking in the top 8 for defense. Now, again, in practice they will, because you wouldn't actually have all of your flex teams on defense, but we're a little bit worried about putting out a list that tells people that the Marauders are not a top 8 defense. But in reality, if you only cared about defense and you were going to be AFK for a war, you were going to do no offense, if you took all the top teams in the game, the Marauders would not be among the best 8 defenses based on how many counters there are and how high up in power those counters would have to be to punch up on them. The Marauders get punched up on by quite a few counters, quite a significant amount, and they have a healthy amount of counters at this point, whereas a lot of the flex teams have fewer options. So that's the confusion that stems from that, is that it will say some of the best defense teams and some of the best offense teams are ranked a bit low because flex teams will be ranked above them, when in reality, you will never have that many teams ahead of either of them. Option 3, a war offense list, a war defense list, and a war flex list. This one sounds pretty simple based on everything you've just heard, right? Well, so obviously just separate the flex teams, then we'll just look at the pure offense, the pure defense, and the flex. And this one, of course, is also a bit squirrely because there aren't that many teams that are hard-coded offense or defense specifically. So what you run into, if you are taking out literally all of the flex teams and just looking at the hard-coded war defense, you run into a situation where, for example, the Defenders are the 8th best hard-coded war defense team. And it's because there are exactly 8 hard-coded war defense teams. And so then you'd have a flex list with like 15 or more teams that are considerably better than the number 8 defense, but they would be over in the flex section. And so, of course, that would be confusing to present to people as well, even though it would also be pretty thorough. All right, and finally, option 4, a war offense list and a war defense list. However, we step in and subjectively assign the flex teams either an offense or a defense tag for simplicity's sake. And obviously, As far as the presentation, the pros to this option are it's going to be the most accurate reflection of the current meta. However, there's a few cons. Firstly, this one is, of course, the least scientific in that we will have arbitrarily chosen which teams go where. And then secondly, it is going to downplay the value of some of the flex teams. So for example, if we designate Sinister Six as a defense team, then it just will completely ignore the fact that the Sinister Six are also a very powerful war offense team that you can at a later date move to offense and literally use to beat a Black Order team. So it would be the at a glance the most accurate, but it would actually greatly downplay the value a lot of these teams have. So we're a bit leery to do that unless that's the option you guys vote. Yeah, let me know any thoughts you have about this in the comment section, but otherwise that is all I've got for you guys today. So I've gone on long enough. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and spend some time in Microsoft Excel, and I will see you guys real soon. Until next time. Peace!